Now, finally, we got to the infrastructure pipeline and the explanation on how it is done and how I like it to be structured. So let's dive into this. The source code, just in case, it will be available on GitHub to download and play around yourself. The first thing that I wanted to note over here, and let's go from top to bottom in terms of the structure and the parts of the pipeline, is that I really suggest and support the idea of variables, and that you should try to reuse those as much as possible, but not too much as always. Basically, it helps you with the don't repeat yourself principle when you write the pipeline, and it will help you to maintain some sort of a level of control, and that your variables are set in a single place, and they do not really have different values between different stages, for example. For infrastructure pipeline, what you want to pinpoint, mostly it would be the Terraform version. For example, over here I have it at 1.8.2, but once again it's outside of the scope for this exercise. And then those three variables, I usually create them, and they control the flow of the stages and how we're going to deploy and release the application or the infrastructure to different environments. Before you have the continuous deployment practice implemented, it is very recommended to at least think about the hotfix strategy and how would you do it, because if your changes they do not flow directly to your production environment through all of the other environments, then you need to be able to somehow bypass the development environment and pick only the correct commits from your main branch to be deployed to your production environment. And here I want to make a little bit of a stop, or maybe a little bit of a diversion, and note that what you want to have is that every commit to your main branch is actually deployed, that is on a second line or that third variable, and then you want to control which of the branches are actually the release branch or not. So altogether those three variables, basically the hotfix branch, the main branch and the release branch, they control how you deploy your code to different environments, as I said. And in my case, the hotfix branch, it is something that has a prefix of hotfix in its name, and the main branch, it's obviously just the main, and then the release branch, it is something that is either the hotfix branch or it is something that is a main branch. That way, my changes, basically how the pipeline is structured afterwards, you can see that it triggers on every commit to every branch, and just I'm not really interested in readme or the dev config file. Those changes are excluded from triggering the pipeline, but basically if you would create a hotfix branch and commit it, or if you would push into the main branch, then it would be treated as a release branch, and the release branch is used, that variable is used a little bit later, I will show you, for triggering the production deployment. The dev environment, and at the moment I have only two environments just as a test. It would be a dev and prod. We deploy to dev for every commit to main branch, but the production environment is controlled by this is release branch. Yeah. Then the pipeline consists of three different stages. The first one is a build, and let's focus on this one. In here we want to validate our Terraform code, that it is a valid code and it can be built in the first place. So in order to do that, you need to install the Terraform, and we are using the specific version of the Terraform that is pinned by the variable. And then, unfortunately for the Terraform, if you want to run the validate command, you still need to initialize it, and in order to initialize it, you need to specify what is the backend. For me, in my infrastructure code, I am using the Azure RM as backend, and that's the only thing that is a little bit questionable. So I usually create that initial Terraform state storage manually, and let's do it right now together. So as you can see, I'm using the dev service connection, and there it is looking for resource group name Terraform dev, and then it would look for the storage account that would be called state dev, and finally the actual container would be tf state. The key, it's how it would be called inside of that state, and it will be created automatically. But at the moment, my Azure resources, they are pretty non-existent. The only thing that I have is two subscriptions, dev and prod, and inside of them I have only a single resource group for the Cloud Shell. So let's create a new resource group, call it Terraform dev. It doesn't really matter where it is located, so I will create it quickly like so, without anything. And inside of this resource group, let's create a storage account. That would be called exactly as it is in the code, so state dev. And the name is already taken, so let's call it pizza state dev. Yep, we don't really need the redundancy. I explained those parts in the Azure services that we are going to use, so if you want, you can go and review that other lecture. While it is creating, we don't really need to continue, so basically we would need just to create a container inside of it. But for now I will come back to the code, and here the next command would be the Terraform validate, and it's pretty simple. I just want to make sure that the code is a valid code for Terraform and there are no obvious issues. This pipeline, it's the most basic one, maybe not the most basic one, but the basic one that I want to see at least everywhere, so it is possible to have a good code quality over your work. And the last task, as I explained in the previous lecture, I want to use the Trivy plugin to basically verify that the code is secure enough and that we don't, for example, hard code the secrets into the Terraform, and it's not too bad. Now let's quickly discuss what we have inside of the Terraform code itself. So the pretty simple Terraform code. So I create a new resource group that would be called pizza selector, and then environment. We will create a Azure service plan. Once again, as explained in the Azure services overview, and I am going to use the free one of a free tier. And finally, we will create the UI for it. So it would be a web app for our pizza selector. Everything is linked together, and there are no other items provided. But what I like to have as well is some sort of a flexibility to be able to deploy between different environments, but the same code. Because of that, we have variables. At the moment, the only variable that is there is what is the name of the environment, and we have the default value of dev. But inside of the pipeline, actually, we have a tf-vars folder with a set of variables for different environments. They are named environment name.json, and here you have the actual values that would be used. So when I will run my Terraform code, it will always be here. And actually, I don't have production yet, so let's quickly create a copy of it as a prod JSON, and the value would be exactly the same, but obviously production for the name of it. For local testing, I usually like to have the dev config file specified, and it would be just a connection to your dev environment, so you should be able to run the Terraform commands from this code base locally to verify that your code is good enough and that it is doing the correct thing, but no more than dev. And then in a README file, I usually just describe how to do all of those commands locally, and you basically init Terraform with reconfigure option to have a correct config, and you can run plan commands or, God forbid, apply. In the meanwhile, I believe our pipeline actually already, our container was already created, so let's create a container inside of it. It will be under blob services. We can create a new container that is dev state. And we will need to repeat the same procedure. So right now we have it only for dev environment, but I'm going to support both dev and prod, so I will create production in parallel. Okay, the state was created for production, and I also created the container inside of it, the dev state. And on top of that, I also updated the code, so now the state for the storage for the state is called pizza state. With all that being said, the build stage is pretty much covered. If there would be some issues with the validation of the Terraform or the trivia task, the stage will fail and nothing else will be executed, so it's a good thing. And then this stage is actually executed for every commit, for every branch, because we have it in trigger. But for the actual deployments, let's check what we have over there. After the build is finished, if it is finished correctly, we are executing one of those two stages, and they are actually templated. And that's what I like about it. It's once again following the don't repeat yourself idea, and we use the template as pretty much as a function to describe how each of our deployments will look like, because they are pretty big. You can pass in some parameters into the template file, and those are specified over here on top of it. So what we want to know is what would be the environment name, what service connection we need to use, and different conditions, what are the dependencies of this stage. So you want to run your production environment, for example, only after the dev environment in my case, or if you have more environments and different dependency between them, you can send it as an object with a list of dependencies. And then just in general, if this stage needs to be executed or needs to be skipped. As I said, I don't want to run the deployment to dev or to production if it's not a main branch or if it's not a hotfix branch. But the actual deployment stage, it will consist of different jobs. First of all, the first job is plan. That's why we once again need to install Terraform of that specific version. And the interesting bit about the variables is that they are actually available from the topmost pipeline itself. So they are passed not as a parameter, but just available as a variable. Then after that we need to initialize Terraform, just like we had it in a build step, but now we need to use the correct service connection. So for this we use the environment name and all of the connection information for the state. It is using those parameters that would be replaced during the runtime of this pipeline. And then finally we can actually run the plan, and for the Terraform plan we actually have separate command options to pass in what are the variables that we are going to use. In this case we just have two of them, the dev and prod, and they are named after the environment that they control. And the final step is that we are publishing the plan. So whatever is the output was over here, and we specify the output would be named into the file name tfplan. We output as a pipeline artifact named tfplan-environment name. There you have a little bit of a problem, but it is not a big one. Basically, you wouldn't be able to rerun the plan step after you executed it once for a given environment, because artifact has a pretty much stable name instead of being linked to build ID, for example, or a timestamp. But I like it that way. After that, because we still don't have the continuous integration, continuous deployment processes, someone needs to manually verify that the plan is good, because at least for me, the infrastructure changes are the most critical ones, and they can break a lot. If you accidentally, for example, delete or rename your application or something else. So that would be a manual step as a separate job. And the final job, if the manual validation was good, then it's actually finally to run the apply command. And for this, we are going to run the deployment type of job. If you remember, I described those differences in the pipeline basics lecture. And for the deployment job, we actually have the environment. That would be the actual environment name that we pass in as a parameter. And here everything is exactly the same. We download the artifact that was available as part of this publish, and on top of that we need to check out this repository again, and then we install Terraform, initialize it, and finally we run the Terraform apply command. And the interesting bit for the Terraform apply command is that you don't need to pass in all of those variables again, and you just want to use exactly the same thing that was planned in the plan stage. So if the plan will go stale for some reason, so imagine if you've run your plan stage and it calculated what are the changes that are needed, but then someone made additional changes to your environment using different pipeline, then the stale plan will fail to be applied, and that's a good thing. And the final stage over here, and it is applicable only for a prod stage, I like to mark and tag different commits that were deployed to production as production tag. The interesting bit here is that we are using the force command, so the tag, something like application name production, it will actually move on with your code, so it will be updated for every production deployment. That way you would be able to tell what is actually deployed to production. So that's how the template looks like, and we use it in two different environments, the dev and prod, using different service connections, the corresponding ones, and the dependencies are different. The dev stage is dependent only on a build, but for the production you don't want to run it before the dev, so it depends on both build and dev, so those need to be green. And the conditions to execute the stage for dev, it will be that we deploy to dev from the release branch, which is main, and not from the hotfix branch. But for the production, as I said, we can deploy it from the main or from the hotfix branch. The idea behind this is that you would work on your feature branches and make some changes. Then they would be deployed to dev for every successful commit to main branch, and they can be tested over there. But if there is something happening with the production and you need to do a quick fix, you have a production tag on your repository. You can create a new hotfix branch from this tag and deploy straight to production without all of the changes on dev that might not be ready to go to production yet. With that being explained, let's quickly have a demonstration. So let's jump to our repository, and we can set up a new build for this one using existing pipeline that is in our pipeline. So be careful not to select the template in this case, and we can run it. So now, as you can see, there are 3 stages: the build, the deploy to dev, and deploy to prod. The very first one is a build. It's waiting for the agent because we are on a free tier. It can take some time to obtain a new agent, but first it will try to validate the Terraform. So it checks out the repository, installs the Terraform of a specified version, which is 1.8.2. Initialize it using the dev connection and validates it. Then it will run the trivia across everything. And that is the most interesting bit, I think, for me, for this demonstration. Everything is green, so because of that we can continue, because we executed this stage from main. It will proceed to dev environment, but because it is the very first time when we try to deploy to dev environment, that pipeline needs additional permission, so we can grant it. And after this is done, the deployment to dev environment will start. Once again, it will wait for the agent to be available. And as soon as this is the case, it will start the procedure. So first it will run the plan job, where it will once again install everything and do the actual plan instead of just a validation. So let's wait for it. Because as I was showing over here, there is nothing actually in our subscriptions. It will create everything from the scratch. So that's what I expect to see in the plan. And there we go. The plan was completed after 3 minutes, and you can see that what's going to be created. So over here we want it will plan only to create new resources as we expect. It would be the web app and the resource group and the application service plan. And what is happening right now, it is waiting for the external validation, so by someone like a real person. You can review it and resume. Let's do exactly that right now. And in the meanwhile, I can show you that actually it's one of the published artifacts. It's over here. That is a TF plan dev that is available. You could download it and use it locally if you would want to, or double check it. And finally here, the apply Terraform stage. It's doing everything as we explained. So now it installs the Terraform, initialize it, and it will download the plan that I just showed you, and we'll try to apply it afterwards. Yep. Now, as you can see, it started the apply. And finally, everything was done. So the apply Terraform stage was completed successfully. We can now go back to the application, to the Azure view, and here you can see that we have a new resource group, which is a pizza selector dev, and inside of this resource group we have the plan and the application itself. It is empty at the moment, so there would be nothing running, but we will fix this small issue in the next lecture when we will be deploying the actually web app to our application to this web app. Over here the production deploy was skipped, and I had to fix it. I actually forgot to add a quality check for the variable, and it was incorrect. So the correct value would be this for the production. I already pushed it, and we can see that the pipeline already started for that new commit automatically. And it is waiting to be deployed to dev. But in the meanwhile, I want to show you another thing. So right now we have 3 environments created over here, and the prod was never deployed before. What we can do is to add an approval for this one. So let's get an approval. That would mean that someone from the pizza selected team, in this case, I'm not going to go into details, first need to approve the deployment to this environment. At the same time, we can see that the dev environment was last deployed from this particular build, and we can check, go to specific builds that did something to this environment. So let's skip a little bit while it is deploying to dev, and I will show you how it looks for the production. There we go. First of all, it needs a permission to access prod environment, because it is the very first time, once again, when we try to deploy something there, and we can permit this one. And after that, after the permission was granted, it still needs to have an approval that we are good to go to production for this particular pipeline run. So if you have multiples of runs and want only to control what can be deployed to production, that's the way to go. So let's review and approve it, and it will start the deployment. In the meanwhile, let's double check that for the dev environment for that second run we haven't done anything, and that's exactly that. So there were no changes to the Terraform code. We updated only the condition for production environment, so no changes to the infrastructure. Okay, and everything was deployed for production as well. So we can check what do we have, and there it is. The production resource group in the production subscription with the same set of resources, so application service plan and application service.